Breaking news as both Nissan and Panasonic issue a fresh critical economic warning and announce 10,000 staff cuts each. Now, that's in addition to the 10,000 in job cuts that Nissan has already announced for a total of, for Nissan, a 15% staff cut. So you got to start asking yourself this question. What would you do if you got fired today, and would you be okay? Now, our second segment is going to be on the massive historical GFC style collapse of vacation home and second home demand, which is another word for speculation collapse. Now, as a result of this speculation collapse, sellers are apparently panicking to sell and slashing their prices like crazy. But there's always a but. The question is where is this happening and why? Now, our ending segment is going to be on the derivatives market and how a slight gust of wind can collapse the entire derivatives market, which in turn destroys your what? 401ks. But, and this is another big but, stay defensive, pay attention, use the math, adjust when necessary, and you might just make it out of this toxic economic cycle a winner. But before we discuss these subjects, happy Monday. Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. You guys already know this video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Mitch, Vexler, how are you, sir?
Good. Based on the video, the live that we did this morning, wasn't it Jerome Powell who said the economy is fine and employment is fine?
Yes,
we're about to find out that, yes, that is not the case.
Right. And just a short while afterwards, we got massive job cuts yet again. Let's start with Nissan, Mitch. Our first report coming out today about 10 a.m. titled Nissan to cut over 10,000 more jobs. And the emphasis there, you guys, is on the more. Now, Nissan Motor will cut more than 10,000 jobs globally, bringing the number of layoffs, including those previously announced, to about 20,000 or 15% of its entire workforce. Nissan is Japan's third largest automaker. It is set to announce on Tuesday, so tomorrow, the results for the business year that ended in March. And it did issue a warning, and that's what this is about. It warned last month it would likely book a record, and I'll just use US dollar here, $4.7 to $5.08 billion net loss in that year due to impairment charges, which is another way to say, please don't sell my stock. Please don't sell my stock. It's just an impairment charge, which is a horrible investment, and they lost a lot of money. Nissan, which had more than 133,000 staff as of March last year, announced plans starting November to cut 9,000 staff jobs and reduce global capacity by 20%. So they're on their way to do that. On Friday, it said it had decided to give up a plan to build a massive $1.1 billion factory for which it was set to receive government subsidies for EV batteries on Japan's southwestern island. So even with those subsidies, still not profitable for them. Almost immediately after that announcement, we have another second announcement stating Japan's Panasonic to cut 10,000 jobs. Reason for layoffs and what's next for the tech giant. Panasonic Holdings, a Japanese electronic giant, is cutting around 10,000 jobs globally, with 5,000 coming from Japan, 5,000 overseas. Now, that decision to cut 10,000 jobs represents about 4% of its global workforce, which is even bigger than Nissan, with 230,000 employees. When the layoffs are set to take place, that's between now and March of 2026, after they reviewed operational efficiency. But when we scroll down here, here's what I really want to know: why the layoffs matter, okay? And there's about 5 points that the article is going to make. Number one, the industry shift. Panasonic Job Cuts reflect the broader industry trends of restructuring to adapt to changing consumer demands. And when they say changing consumer demands, we need to make more money and the prices need to come down. That's the real demand here. That's the real consumer demand. But they're also saying technological advances and sustainability requirements. Number two is also interesting: economic impact. And this is for anyone that loses a job. With 10,000 jobs at stake, the layoffs will have significant economic impacts for affected employees, their families, and local communities. That's why I've been watching Washington, D.C. so closely. Number three, company restructuring. The move indicates Panasonic efforts to streamline operation, reduce costs, and focus on high growth areas like electric vehicle batteries and artificial intelligence. Number 4, market competitiveness. The layoffs demonstrate Panasonic's attempt to stay competitive in a rapidly evolving market where companies must innovate and optimize to survive. Number 5, global workforce trends. Panasonic's decision contributes to the growing trend of layoffs and restructuring in the tech and industrial sectors, highlighting the challenges companies faced in changing market conditions. Mitch, they really can't blame the Trump tariffs anymore because we got an announcement today, and that's why I saw the market explode, where China and the Trump administration are getting along. Apparently, they're going to come to some type of deal. But before we go into that, I want to ask the viewers this question. So here's our viewer question. I want you guys to write below, what would you do if you got laid off today, and would you be okay? If you work for a corporation and you see internal changes, beware that maybe you could potentially get fired. And if you don't want to get laid off, you don't want to get fired, ask yourself, what could you do to become and maintain being a solid asset and a favorable personality at your employer to stay there? Now, in addition to that, you may want to start a side gig and you may want to warm up your resume because you want to rebound quickly. But I am excited to hear from you guys. Please comment below. My question for you, Mitch, is since they can't blame the tariffs this time, what's really going on under the hood that would cause 2 companies to announce 10,000 staff layoffs in the same day? What's going on over there?
It's very simple. Mom and pop are out of money. So Nissan, automobile, Panasonic, consumer goods, both of which could be classified as consumer goods. The mom and pop is simply out of money. UPS, transactions going through UPS, mom and pop is out of money. They're all complaining now, well, we have to lay these people off. Why weren't they complaining the second inflation started to rear its head? Why didn't any of these entities who have reach, why did they not stand up, pick up the phone, because some of them have that type of capacity, to Jerome Powell and say, what the hell are you doing? Powell, Federal Reserve, is just claiming innocence. Well, we think everything is okay. We'll get back to you. You can't have these 2 things existing on the same plane. These CEOs overstuffed their own capacity based on what they thought, not what was quantifiable. What was quantifiable, and the only thing that matters, is the median household income, regardless of what country you're in. They chose to ignore it, and now their companies will end up suffering, as will their employees, because of their ignorance.
Mitch, how important is it for mom and pop, like normal mom and pop, unless they're self-employed, but how important is it for mom and pop to prepare for potential job loss?
Even if you are self-employed, you need employees, right? If depending on the size of the company. So this problem is going to affect everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. The inflation is rampant. And you can say, well, it comes in waves, it's up, it's down, food is up, energy is down, which oil is down at the moment considerably, which helps. But the bottom line is the inflation exists and wouldn't have existed but for the printing by the Federal Reserve. So it doesn't matter who you are. You can be a millionaire. You could be a person who earns $70,000 a year. It doesn't matter. The inflation is touching you and it's eating away at what cash you do have. And it happens to everybody. That's the problem.
Now, say we're specifically talking about a mom and pop, young, old family. They work for a corporation. They don't think they're going to get laid off, right? They have no whiffs of challenges at their company. Is it important for people in that position to prepare? And when I say prepare, money saved, and more importantly, a resume made. If someone doesn't suspect they're going to lose their job, should they make a resume?
Those who suspect they're not going to lose their job better have a resume and better have skills. And you should be spending your time, your free time, getting them. Because when you need it, it's too late. You prepare in advance for these type of situations. I mean, I've been around for quite some time watching companies. I've studied companies. I've got over 7,300 spreadsheets. I know exactly what I'm looking at. I know how they behave. And these are cyclical problems that keep occurring, not just at the corporate level, but at the mom and pop level, at the house level. because not all mom and pops have the education necessary to take this type of hit. That's why
Right.
you're seeing thousands of people getting foreclosed on. They weren't prepared. They weren't prepared for the real estate taxes to go up like they've done in the last 5 years, up 100% in 5 years. They weren't prepared for that. They didn't have the money. The vet, the 84-year-old vet in Ohio, A, he was retired. B, he's on fixed income. He wasn't prepared to take a $3,000 hit that he doesn't have money to pay. None of these people are prepared. That's the constant theme.
Well,
And
yeah.
for what it's worth, that's the failure of the school system.
You know, another theme is these once homes that were assets. You can get in, do a pro forma, cash flows, you have a wedge. The theme is homes are now turning into toxic liabilities for the people that don't understand what it is they're doing. Obviously, there's, you know, like myself, I own a property. I'm going to be okay. I'm well hedged in that property. I have a 2.5% interest rate. I have a 40%, 50% in equity. I'm doing okay. But for the people that don't have what I just said, that can't cash flow, their property taxes are blindsiding them, it's going to get really bad and really challenging. And speaking of which, to your point, Mitch, it's all income levels. Let's go into what's happening now with the collapse in vacation home demand and what sellers are doing about it. This article came out yesterday on Sunday titled "Panic as U.S. Vacation Rental Boom Collapses and Owners Rush to Sell at Steep Discounts." And when I saw that, I was like, oh, wow, what's going on there? Vacation homes are being dumped at a rapid rate as fresh fears of a housing market crash and a shrinking pool of renters rattle sellers. And I've read a report to you guys, I don't know if you remember, it was last year, where it said the bigger issue with the GFC wasn't subprime, it was the speculation collapse, meaning a whole bunch of people were trying to sell their second homes, third homes, or vacation homes. The number of people buying second homes has plunged to the lowest level since records began and is under a third of what it was during the pandemic boom. A toxic mix of sky-high mortgage rates, soaring maintenance costs, and a widespread return to office push is fueling the trend. Wrong. The lack of income growth and the massive price increases are fueling that. In 2024, just 86,000 mortgages were issued for second homes across the United States. That's a 5% drop from a year before and down dramatically from the 258,000 in 2021, showing a huge drop of demand. At the highest of the pandemic, remote workers who could afford it were fleeing big cities in droves and buying up homes in sunny spots like Florida and California. Those days are over. Vacation homes or second homes made up just 2.6% of all U.S. mortgages last year, according to a new survey from Redfin. Most people aren't buying vacation homes at all because mortgage rates and insurance costs, especially for waterfront properties. But again, they're not talking about the price. I like the insurance. The insurance was in there, but they're not talking about the price. They're not talking about the lack of income. Airbnb demand has crashed and rental rates are priced too high, and landlords who want to make a quick profit just aren't getting it. We've been warning you guys about the Airbnb collapse. In 2024, the average second home cost a whopping $495,000. In particularly Florida, once a vacation home buyer's playland, is seeing the most second home listings hit the market. In Miami, listen to this, vacation home mortgages plunged 32.2% in 2024. Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, and Tampa also saw huge drops. Local realtors say it's mostly baby boomers, this is important, dumping their properties after their stock market portfolios took a hit during the recent tariff crash. A tariff crash? That's what they're saying. According to that article, there's a direct correlation between someone's 401k going down and the distressed selling. Do you think that's true? As 401ks go down, inventory goes up.
If somebody is building as a developer and you're depending on somebody to buy your product in a down cycle market, i.e. your 401ks are in trouble, obviously the developer is now in trouble because he built product, he's got it, he's going to have to do something with it. They can't afford to sit on it. So that increases the inventory. So directly and indirectly, yes, The reality is that anybody who is buying second homes is also contributing because they want to sell those homes because they may see problems in their life coming their way. So they want to be liquid. Problem with real estate, it's not liquid fast. It's liquid, but not liquid fast.
And it's not cheap to sell. I mean, we have the lawsuits, right? Before the lawsuits, and hopefully when they do the next report, it will go down. But it costs to sell your house about 8% because it's not just a 6% to the realtors. You got the escrow, the title fees. If you pay any closing costs for the buyer, it could cost 8%. I mean, it's like selling, it's like a premium on gold or silver. You're going to pay a massive premium if you're going to sell your house. Do you think it's a good idea for anyone that's retired, Mitch, if they can sell a rental property or a vacation property and make a profit? Do you think that it's still a good time to do so? Or do you think they should buckle down and figure out something with their other properties? What is your take there?
It's very difficult to make a global statement because there are just certain areas in real estate where it's an area that is maybe challenged, but it's a good area. So globally, you can't really make the statement. Individually, the best thing anybody can do is try to determine what the probability is of losing principal by holding that asset. And if you're in an area that's heavily taxed, in other words, if the taxes are greater than the potential profit, why do you own it? It really is a personal choice, and somebody's got to look at it and say, what is the probability of me losing my principal, given the tax rate, given the inflation rate, given the risk to finding a tenant or not finding a tenant, depending on what you're doing. So that is the ultimate question. Can your personal pocketbook take the hit to that principal? Is it justifiable? I suspect probably not, but everybody's different.
Yeah, and so depending on people's situation, right? There's no universal answer. Probably it might be a good opportunity if you're losing money. You don't want to lose money. You don't want to hold on to your property. You're not using it. It's not being rented out. It's just sitting vacant for most of the year. You're paying taxes on it. Why are you doing that? Right? There's other assets that are still maybe you should invest in, like metals. I'm not a gold or silver salesman like some people accuse me of. I'm like, how am I selling silver and gold? I just recently bought silver. So I'm a gold and silver salesman? That doesn't make sense. I'm a math person and I'm for mom and pop. That's who I am. Let's move on to the last thing, Mitch, which is on the new term that's being used on the Trump trade collapsing the Treasury market. Take a look at what they're saying. Here's how an obscure bet on bonds almost crashed the 29 trillion Treasury market, Fed official says. And look at this little brief snippet here. I mean, it's like Market Watch, just they can't help themselves. It's like, you guys stay in your lane, keep the politics out of stuff. Like anything that politics touch, I don't even want to be a part of it, to be honest with you. But this is what this is saying. The abrupt unwinding of the popular Trump trade. So there's the new term right there. This is the Trump trade in the Treasury market likely fueled April's crash. This is basically saying, okay, so I'm going to read a few things here. A massive bond bet backfired in April, and top Federal Reserve officials now say it likely sparked the biggest spike in long-dated Treasury yields since 1987. Now, Roberto, who manages the Fed's roughly $6 trillion security portfolio, said on Friday that the abrupt unwinding of a popular strategy known as the swap spread trade likely exacerbated April's liquidity crunch in treasuries. It's crazy that there's liquidity crunch in treasuries. The turmoil began after President Donald Trump announced sweeping new tariffs on April 2nd. At first, investors rushed into U.S. government debt in a classic flight to safety trade, pulling down yields, but just days later, yields on long-dated treasuries reversed sharply. One factor that appears to have contributed to this unusual pattern in the unwinding of the so-called swap spread trade. Interest rates around the world can be based on floating or fixed payment schedules. Swap rates allow two investors to agree to an exchange of floating rate payments for fixed ones over a set period of time. The goal would be to hedge the risk of rate fluctuations over that stretch. Hedge fund and other investors saw an opportunity to exploit the gap under Trump and began buying treasuries and shorting these floating rate assets. So it seems to me that maybe the big issue here is the hedge funds and investors seeing an opportunity to exploit the treasury market. think maybe that's what's really happening. So Mitch, can you talk to the viewers about how those credit swaps is something that you've been warning the viewers about for at least the last 8 months?
The problem with these articles and even these videos, there's really never enough time to explain in detail what's going on. However, that Market Watch article is annoying beyond belief. You have swaptions, options, credit default obligations, credit loan obligations, CDOs. They're all derivatives. And there's different numbers out there, but let's just run the conservative number. It's 600 trillion worth of derivatives. So when the article says, well, but this could be a problem, it doesn't explain what the problem is. The problem is that the US Treasury and the Federal Reserve on the reverse repo accept unmarked to market, meaning not marked to market, derivatives as collateral in exchange for the Federal Reserve to be able to park US Treasuries overnight, that's the reverse repo, in banks that would not exist but for the support of the Federal Reserve. That money's all in the backs of mom and pop. What we've been saying is, in order for the system not to implode as in long-term capital management, which is exactly what happened, and the Federal Reserve stepped in to rescue it, in order for that not to happen again, because it only takes one bank with a massive amount of these derivatives, and nobody knows where those derivatives are. So you've got to understand something. The Federal Reserve isn't tracking it. It could be on balance sheet. It can be off balance sheet. It doesn't show up at the Federal Reserve until they say, yeah, well, we're going to accept this bucket of derivatives in exchange for, we're going to accept this bucket of derivatives that are not marked to market, meaning nobody knows what the hell the value is. In exchange for you, the bank, you give us those derivatives, we're going to give you back US Treasuries to strengthen your balance sheet. That's a horror, just an absolute horror show, because people are making bets and on the back of mom and pop at the tail end of the day. Why is it on the back of mom and pop? Because when things go wonky, then the Federal Reserve and or the Treasury will say, we're just going to print money. Okay, we're at the point now, you keep printing, you got the Weimar Republic, the US dollar will crash. The goal here is to stop all this stuff from happening. I don't know what's happening at the White House with regard to these issues, but it all backs up on mom and pop. And if you don't protect the economic engine of the United States of America, which is mom and pop, these things will blow to shreds. And that's why we've been pounding the table on it. Federal Reserve can't take the heat. We've printed it. We put it in writing. Explain yourself. Mr. Powell, explain yourself. Look at these derivatives. What are you doing about them? It's 600 trillion. It's great that Doge is doing what it's doing to save billions. The truth of the matter is they've got to be going after trillions. The derivatives have got to be marked down to zero. And if that knocks off 50, 60% of the banks when that occurs, so be it. They're over-levered. The derivatives are over-levered. You've got leverage of 200 to 1 in certain circumstances. That's why one bank can take the entire system down. Nobody knows which bank it is, but it's there.
So it sounds like you're saying that the bigger issue is not this Trump trade, which is a new term. That's very interesting. But maybe it's because the Federal Reserve keeps backstopping or preventing banks from going under at the cost of mom and pop's balance sheet. So when they save a bank, they take from my balance sheet. You save a bank, you take from my balance sheet. And it's not just a little small hit. This is an absolute atrocity to the American people.
Horror show. Yeah, it's a horror.
And it's not just the American people. The Federal Reserve has impacted anyone that has our debt, which is most countries. They're not doing good either. I mean, they literally have taken a playbook out of what we're doing in our economy. And so that's why I think, would you agree, Mitch? That's why Japan is making these back-to-back announcements with job cuts.
Well, in Japan, do you know who the largest holder of corporate share certificates in Japan is? It's the Japanese government. So could you imagine, as one of the playbook methods, Powell steps up and says, yeah, not only are we going to buy back our US Treasuries, now we're going to put a floor under the stock market, and we're going to start buying the shares. again, it's a horror show. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. These people are nuts. It's not just mom and pop as homeowners. It is every single human being in the United States. Whatever you buy, that inflation and what you bought in the last 5 years is a direct result of the monkeying around by the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve. You print money, that's what causes the inflation. It's a hidden tax. Mom and pop's income didn't go up. Well, that's why you've got this circular argument of a problem. That's a horror show. It ends up in ultimate bankruptcy unless they say, we're going to start hammering on this and we're going to start slicing and dicing trillions, not billions.
Yeah. And they're going to need to, because Japan by far is the biggest holder of our treasuries. So Japan's going to have to do something. And other than that, guys, I want you to remember we have multiple links in this description. Please take a look at the criminal complaint, the short version. It's only 6 steps to fill out a criminal complaint. Doesn't matter what state you are, just follow the steps, turn that in, help us hold people accountable. Definitely answer the question. Let us know what value you got. Like, subscribe, share the video. And if you're out there investing in yourself, your relationships, the people that you love, real estate, the stock market, whatever it is, you guys already know we wish you luck. And we hope you win.